And with that, we are back for another edition of the Astro Weather. Today is 11/7, kind of an interesting day. Historically, there was a major terror event that happened in England. I think that might have been, around 2010? 2010 on 11/7 in one of the tubes. That was back when terror events were a thing, right? And usually lined up with some kind of 11 association, 9/11, 7/11, of course, with 3/11, 4/11. But today is 11/7, and seven's a sacred day. It's my favorite number of all the numbers, and it's because of all the associations that are related to seven, but also the geometry of seven. To me, it's one of the most interesting numbers. When you look at the number seven, you can see that the top part of the seven is the plateau of heaven. So this is where wisdom theoretically dwells, right? So this could be the heaven that exists as part of the manifestation of the sky, or the sky god, or it could be also your own version of heaven, right? Sort of the divine mind. Sorry about that. But this is where the realm of inspiration is. And then we have the lightning strike, the lightning crack, and it comes down from the realm of heaven. And seven is inspiring. It is the revelation from the mind of God. So I love this. This is an interesting day numerologically. We have the 11, right? The twins, Joachim, Yakan, and Boaz here. And then you have 7, and then 2023. That's basically another 7, right? So we have 11/7/7. Interesting, very interesting day. 11/77. Wonder what happened in the year 11/77. Anyway, hey, we got Ralph Winter here today. Good to see you, Ralph. Lisa Dawn, T. Seguin, what's happening? We got a good group here. London is calling. Elko 89. He is a former football player. My man, Mark S., what's going on? The mods are here in action. Good to see you, Ryan. And I think I had did I have a Steve sighting? And let's see, I know I had a Tom sighting. Anyway, welcome to the show. We're going to get into the Astro Weather, and we have a really great start of the day. But before we do all of that, here's what I need you to do. I need you to hit that like button. And then if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, because there's a very good chance you've been unsubscribed at some point. And my goal is to hit 20,000 subscribers. It is a dream of mine to hit 20,000 subscribers. This is a very Capricornian effort as I'm inching my way up the pyramid, slowly but surely. But it's like when they unsubscribe people, I slip back down a couple of levels. But that's my goal, because 20 is the aeon, and it represents the beginning of a new order. So if you can help me get to 20,000 subscribers, well, that would be awesome. There's just something about 20,000. Like, I'm cool with where everything is, but there's something about 20,000 people. And I've been doing this since 2009. You would think that maybe over time I'd have that many people. But people do unsubscribe too. They're like, oh, I'm tired of that son of a bitch. Oh, here he goes again. He's off on that tangent. Oh, he's talking sports again. Right. Anyway, let's get into the weather. Hit that like, please. And then give some thanks to the mods over there in chat. They're always doing a great job keeping things flowing. Ryan reminds me of what I need to do. Okay, so here we go. How is everybody this morning, or wherever you are in the realm? So the sun, we're just 2 days away from the Sun-Mars conjunction. Now people say, Kazemi, 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 it's going to cancel each other out. I don't know. I don't know. The Sun and Mars, both representations of first house placements. I am and I will, right? There's a lot of I am and I will here. So we've got that to look forward to on the horizon. I believe we're a mere, 7 days away from that. And then we get into the opposition with Uranus, which we've been talking about. Mercury is now kind of out in front of the pack. So it's out in front of Ceres and Mars and the Sun. So we're really taking a much more mental approach today. When Mercury had been behind the scenes, we've gone through Mercury retrograde, but eventually it is outpaced the Sun and now is out in front of this very important stellium in Scorpio. So taking a mental approach today is not a bad thing. I know a lot of people would say, oh, well, you've got to be more intuitive, or you can't. I think there's a high degree of intuition built into Mercury and Scorpio. It's one of those aspects of Mercury where the individual can be both intensely intuitive, but also in a lot of ways very rational, because Scorpio is a fixed sign. So it's got a wide aperture. Like it's more open, but it's also very kind of fixed, right? So there's a lot of focus and intensity with Mercury and Scorpio. So why don't we play with that theme here as Mercury begins to trine, is in trine with Neptune. Today's more of an exact trine. So why don't you think about something today that you want to make happen in your life? And you have to put some intention into it. You have to put some focus into it. And at the same time, with Neptune, there's also a sense of being guided, along a certain path. And if one path isn't working, the beautiful thing about water is that it redirects itself, and it doesn't really have to do anything to redirect itself. If you've ever, when I was a kid, I used to, play, like most kids, like you'd have the gutter in the street, and somebody would be, washing their car up the street. And then you'd go and hang out there, and you put a little sand out there, and you'd watch the water go around the sand, or you know what I mean? It's like little kid stuff, but that's what water does. It finds a way around things. It doesn't hit the wall. Maybe sometimes it's, well, if it's a dam, but usually it just moves around things. It doesn't necessarily have to plan around it, right? That's not the nature of water. So today is, I would say, is kind of a path of least resistance day, but focused and intentional. It's not like you're just allowing, things to happen. No, you have to have some focus and intent, but you also have to be willing to flow. And this is one of those days where it's a really good day for something like that. And we can ride this trine with Mercury here for the next 3 or 4 days, even though it begins to separate. So I think a logical, planned out, rational, reasonable, focused approach, because Mercury's out in front. You can't not like validate it and ride with it, right? If you're trying to have some other approach during this transit, you're missing out, right? You're just missing out. And here we're in the Cancerian decan. So there is some instinctual components to how the mind is working, or how the mind can work, how we plug into the galactic mind. Because really, when we're running with these transits, that's what we're really doing. We're kind of plugging into the galactic mind. That's what the transits represent. It just like our minds can be all over the place at times, and we can have part of our mind be engaged in things that are very detail oriented. Another part of our mind can be dreamers. The galactic mind can also represent the many facets of the galactic mind. So this is essentially what we're plugging into here. Mercury is also in sextile with Pluto. If you're a mental person, this is a good day for you, by and large. And because, again, in Scorpio, it's water, and we're going with the flow here. We're finding what the flow is. Now, it does reach an impediment a little bit, because we have Saturn down here right, at 0 Pisces, which we talked about during the show last week on Sunday. And then Mercury is squaring Saturn. So there is a problem to be solved, right? And so life is like that. We have these issues, we have problems, we do have impediments. But instead of a hammer and a chisel effect, the energy is much more akin to flowing around your problem, right? Let the problem be somebody else's problem. You know what I mean? Now, that doesn't mean that you can't flex a little bit, because Mercury Saturn squares do cause an individual to kind of grind. Like, I've got a Mercury Saturn square in my chart, and when I was younger, they didn't diagnose it back then because they really didn't have those tools. But clearly, I had a learning disability when it came to math. I mean, I was good at certain parts of math, and then when I got to things like algebra and trigonometry, it was just like my brain fucking hurt. But I couldn't do it. I really struggled. But I was really good at the language skill stuff. So life is weird that way. But with a Mercury Saturn square, you just keep sharpening the blade, right? So this is a time where you can sharpen your blade. But I would say that by and large, it's not a day to take the blade out. It's not a day to take the machete out, right? This is a day of flow. So flow around the impediments. You can work to see what the impediments are, but flow around the impediments. Let it be somebody else's problem. Okay, let them take it on, and that's the other thing too. It's kind of like a lot of times you want to be in control of everything, or is in control as much as we can be. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but we can't control everything. And today is one of those days where it's like, okay, you want to run the meeting today, and you're so insistent on running the meeting today. Go ahead, run the meeting today. Right, and just flow around these impediments. And the more that we get closer with the Sun and Mars in trine with Neptune, the more that we can become aware that there's a different option available to us, and particularly like on the world stage, which a lot of people are still very stressed out about. And this world stage has become this binary event again. Palestine, Israel, left, right, Zionist, Christian, Jew, blah, 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 right? And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Let's find a different path here. Let's flow around this. And how we do it at a global level, that remains to be seen. But when we get the Sun and Mars conjuncting and trining to Neptune, there has to be another way through versus just a constant bombardment of an area of the world which is the size of the Las Vegas Strip and our own consciousness. The moon, our buddy the moon, is now in the sign of Virgo. Oh yeah, got that critical Virgo moon. It's at 9 degrees Virgo. So we're just moving into second decan, which is the Capricorn moon. And the moon almost qualifies as a singleton today, with the exception of the trine to Jupiter and the opposition with Saturn. So we have a moon-Saturn opposition today. Can't really see it because Juno is also there. Juno in Virgo is really good for starting new routines around your health. And it's been there for 8 degrees, so it's not like it's just happened overnight. But the Moon-Saturn opposition, we got the brunt of the Moon-Saturn opposition yesterday, but it's still there. And of course, the Moon is a more intuitive approach, and Saturn is formulated and structured and ordered, disciplined, planned out, right? Those, it's the classic feminine, and I think Saturn's masculine. I think it's masculine, even though it's the rule of Capricorn, and Capricorn is Earth, and Earth is feminine. I think Saturn's masculine. I think Capricorn is masculine also. At the very least, it's kind of what unisexual Baphomet masculine. But I think it's masculine. So this is the father and this is the mother. This is the father and this is the mother. We have the opposition between the mother and the father today. For those of you going through stress and challenge with your primary mates, this is a day where some of that can get kind of fleshed out. Who are we? Where are we? What are we doing? Where are we going? And that moon in Virgo gets really lit up during a time where People feel very uneasy, whether it's the banking situation, whether it's what's happening in the Middle East, whatever, right? That moon in Virgo is nervous as hell. And then you've got that opposition with Saturn, and it feels like, we're all under the kind of, what would be the appropriate phrase here? We're all under the gun in some ways, right? It feels like we're under the gun. And that gets, again, it gets really fleshed out, literally fleshed out with the Saturn moon opposition. And in immutable signs, it's nervous. It's like a nervous energy. So the good news is that the moon it moves fast. So, by the time we get into tonight and then tomorrow with other people who are going to bed soon, right? You'll wake up tomorrow, that moon will be out of this oppositional orbit. It's almost there now. And then it's on its way to a conjunction with Venus. And so we're going to have this last kind of lunar Venus conjunction, wide conjunction. And Venus is about ready to turn into Libra, which I think will be good for, like, if there's any chance for a quote unquote peaceful solution in the Middle East for next. And here's what I think is going to happen. I think that that they've been doing raids in Gaza, and that they have been taking some hits and losses in Gaza. But the idea is that they were just going to level it as much as possible and make it as unlivable as possible. And then we'll probably see some kind of token ceasefire with Venus and Libra, right? It'll be like, okay, we'll have some kind, but the Israelis will have accomplished what they wanted to do, which was level most of Gaza and make it completely unlivable. Like, they don't have to go in and annihilate and kill everybody. And I don't think that was ever really the plan. But they do want to remove the people because they have plans. Now, we can see Venus moving into Libra, and yeah, okay, here we go. We're going to negotiate a 72-hour ceasefire. And that could get extended. But then there's going to be a humanitarian crisis. And this is where, and I'll get into this in 15 minutes, this is where Israel's going to have a real problem. Because they've really engaged with an all or nothing situation. But that's not really what they want. They really just want the conditions are to be so decrepit that they have to leave. And that's where the international community come in and render some kind of moral judgment around what's happened, right? So Israel's playing, there was, they used to play this game called Chicken. When you were a kid, you'd be on your bike and, you would start at one end of the street, the person would be at the other end of the street, and you'd come racing towards each other. And then somebody would have to move. And every now and then you'd get two really stubborn people, probably fix signs, they'd hit each other, right? The Chicken was made famous in the movie Rebel Without a Cause. I think right now they're playing Chicken here. Who's going to blink first? I wonder if Blinken's going to blink first. Anyway, as the moon moves closer to Venus, we're going to get a sense here of like the 11th hour kind of material, right? Like we have to, Virgo's critical. It's critical. The word critical it's not just, well, I don't like what you're wearing today. Does it make you look foolish, right? That would be critical. Or, you know what, you could lose a few pounds. Critical. But it's also critical in the sense that there's something about the energy which is, you have to pay attention to it. Like it's critical that you look at the situation. So Virgo plays a role in that. So as the moon gets closer to Venus, this sense here that things are critical is going to come more to the surface, and it has a lot to do with where people live, right? And then eventually we have Venus moving into Libra. That's what the next 2 days. And there's a major shift. We do have this grand trine. It's kind of the last stand of the grand trine with Venus and Pluto and Uranus, which I like the grand trine. So with that, I think you would want to look for, useful people, useful allies. Virgo is always useful. You want to look around and say, who's useful in my life? And am I useful to them? It's a two-way street. And then when Venus goes into Libra, you get to check it out, right? Balance between, okay, well, You bring this to my life, I bring this to your life. Yeah, it's pretty good, right? Life is transactional. Life is a transactional experience. And we're always keeping score in our heads, whether or not we're keeping score. Where we're always trying to figure out if somebody is giving too much or too less, or we're giving too much or too less, right? That's just the nature of things. And if you're not paying attention. And you can make a decision to be unconditional. There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to make a decision to get there. So when Venus goes into Libra, we become more aware of the transactional relationship that we have with things. And I think it'll be an interesting transit. And by the time it gets into Libra, really kind of into sort of the early phases of Libra, the sun is going to be in Sagittarius. And we know that the sun moves faster than Venus does. So we're setting up for a sun-Venus sextile in the sign or signs that represent justice. Sagittarius is law, Venus is the scales, and Libra is the scales of justice. It's going to be an interesting transit. Very interesting transit. Will justice prevail? I think it could. At what level? We shall see. I like today's energy. We have a mystic rectangle down here. We got a grand trine here. There's a lot of trine action going on, a lot of sextile action. We're in that square. We've been in this, it's kind of just at the beginning of the square. Saturn squaring Uranus. And that's the old guard versus the disruptive new guard. And I can see the protest movement being really entangled in the Saturn-Uranus square. And as Saturn moves forward, it'll begin to take the edge off that square a little bit. We already talked about the square with Mercury here. I love the trines with Neptune. Mars is moving into a tighter trine with Neptune. The sun will follow. And it just reinforces this idea of flow. Go with the flow in your life. If it's too hard, there's a time where you have to climb the hill. And there's a time where you go with the flow. And with Scorpio, which is a fixed sign, and it has to do with death and letting go and rebirth, it's an easier time to do that. It's an easier time to do these things because the flow is so much greater. It's like an opportunity. And why would you not take the opportunity to remove impediments in your life and not have to do a bunch of heavy lifting? But the one thing Scorpio will do is it will evoke fear. It's a fear of change. Oh my God. My life could be this easy if I just make these decisions? Really? Is that easy? Jeez. Well, maybe I should consider it. All right. Maybe you should consider it. Let's look at the true hemp science star of the day. Now, give you a little preamble here. This person is one of my favorite. Hold on a second. This person is one of my favorite musicians of all time. And when did I fall in love with this musician? It wasn't when other people fell in love with her. Other people fell in love with her back in the late 60s and early 70s. And quite honestly, even though I think her musical output during that time is tremendous, it doesn't intrigue me as much as what she started to do in the early to mid 70s, late 70s, where I thought she was probably one of the most interesting and experimental artists making music. And I started to listen to, I used to work in this used record store. So I would get to play records. I remember the first time that I heard her music, I checked out a record from the library, and the album was The Hissing of Summer Lawns. And I couldn't, there was just something incredibly powerful and melodic and really interesting about that record. There's a track on there called The Jungle Line, which just absolutely mesmerized me when I heard it. It's a rhythmic, and Joni Mitchell's kind of chanting over the top of it, and it's got this kind of weird electronic thing going on. I'm like, this is fucking Joni Mitchell? This is the woman that's saying, help me, I'm falling in love again. Or, Paradise put up a parking lot. Good songs, don't get me wrong, but man, they're nowhere near the Jungle Line. So she got my attention, and Lover's Kiss on Main Street, Free Man in Paris, like the Hissing of Summer Lawns is an incredible record. And so then I worked at this used record store, and her albums would pop up in the bin. Oh, let me listen to this one. I think it was around maybe 20 at the time, 2021. So I knew her music, and I would listen to it every now and then. But then I got into Hajira and Don Juan's Reckless Daughter. I'm like, whoa, this person is really, really doing something super unique. She's playing with these jazz guys. She's sort of like the Canadian folk version of Steely Dan. But very different, very different in terms of she would just get a set of players and use them for the most part, instead of getting 20 guys and sampling the best takes on guitar or drums or whatever. But she was kind of operating in a parallel universe with Steely Dan. She had Pat Metheny in her band, and Michael Brecker and Jaco Pastorius and Don Elias. Just a really, really great band. Wayne Shorter, I think, played with her. Right? I think he was there before Michael Brecker. She had Wayne Shorter, Pat Metheny, Don Elias, and Jaco Pastorius. I mean, my God. And her lyrical content was just off the fucking charts. And the thing that you can see about Joni Mitchell in her chart, by the way, this is your True Hemp Science star of the day. True Hemp Science. We'll get to them in a second. The thing you can really see about Joni Mitchell in her chart is the moon. She has this moon in Pisces, and it's right on the midheaven. You know how she's feeling. You know how Joni Mitchell is feeling. It's all over her records, right? She's the most confessional artist, I think, of the 20th century when it comes to her lyrical content. It's all out there. And some of it is, not always easy to look at. But she has this really interesting relationship with relationship. In fact, she's got her Venus return right now. And you can hear her being critical of, a lot of times she'll talk about relationships when they're in the rear view mirror. And you can hear her working things out in her relationships like a form of alchemy. And then she's got this Neptune conjunction with Venus. So she's turning her relationships into art. That's what she's doing, right? Kind of long form art. And she's taking that experience and then moving it up to the midheaven with Pisces on the midheaven. It wasn't just her that was confessional. Hell, she got Robert Plant to sing about her, going to California. And I'm going to meet a woman with flowers in her hair. That's Joni Mitchell. He says, I can't wait to get there, because I think she probably played the role of a muse for Robert Plant for a brief period of time. You can see all the Leo in her second house, Pluto, True Node. She's got Jupiter, right? Very creative. Like, that's her baseline. Her baseline is creativity. And she's got Cancer rising. So Cancer rising, again, Joni Mitchell is just wired for sensitivity and feeling. Cancer rising, Mercury trying the ascendant, Sun trying the ascendant. Then we have the moon trying the ascendant, Mercury and Sun trying the moon. She's writing about her experience, and all the world gets to feel it, right? And she's also a painter, and you can see that. You can see the watercolors, right? The oils, all being very Piscean, fluid, water-based. She's not into sculpture. Maybe she is, but it's not her art form. The challenge with Joni's chart is that she doesn't have a lot of Earth. She's got that Venus. She has Chiron. So she's literally Chiron in the third house. She's talking about, her wounds and how things are so imperfect in a lot of ways. But she turns it into art, and she probably did it better than anybody else in that regard in the 20th century. And I've always felt that Joni Mitchell should have gotten the same sort of props and accolades as Bob Dylan. They're both, ironically, from the North, right? Dylan is from the northern part of Minnesota. Joni Mitchell's from Canada. So they have this sort of northern spirit, right, that they share together. But I always felt like Joni Mitchell was a much better lyricist and a much more interesting artist than Bob Dylan. Much more interesting. And, you know, if Dylan's talked about his relationships, you know, you had to go through the haze and the fog of all the Gemini, but not Mitchell. Like, it was all out there, sort of on, you know, sort of her emotions are available for the world to see. A very difficult relationship with the father. I think she grew up on a farm in Canada. And you can see with the Mars-Saturn conjunction, I know nothing about a relationship with her. I guarantee it was difficult. That the father was hard and probably somebody very, very old school. And I think Joni Mitchell had a hard time being in this world. And she's still around. I don't know how long she's going to be around. But Saturn in the 12th house demands the individual, you know, retreat from the world to try to find their bearings in a quote unquote more spiritual setting. You know, if the 6th house is the flesh, the 12th house is the spirit, right? And she's got Mars and Gemini, so she's restless. And you can feel that restless quality in her music. You know, she changes genres. You know, she moves. You know, she's kind of a shapeshifter. You know, she goes from folk to the more open tunings of the jazz stuff, and eventually, you know, she gets an album produced by Thomas Dolby. I think it's a Dog Eat Dog. It's very kind of electronic, and you know, so she's not a person to sort of rest on her laurels. Like, I'm just going to mine one genre forever. And Joni Mitchell doesn't do that. And that's that restlessness of Mars. And I think her chart is complicated. And I think she deals with a layer of suffering in some ways that even though you can hear it in her music, it doesn't. I think if she didn't have her music and it didn't have her and didn't have her painting, I think she would be terminally depressed and probably even suicidal, to be honest with you. And then, you know, we have the whole thing with, unfortunately, what went down with COVID and the shots. And, you know, Joni Mitchell she went into fear, like a lot of boomers. I'm sorry, if you're a boomer, I'm just going to be straight up. A lot of boomers went into fear around COVID. And you can see that with Neil Young, you know, her fellow Canadian and another Scorpio, by the way. When Neil Young basically said, you know, I'm going to remove my music because Spotify has Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan is encouraging people to find another way around the issue. And then Joni Mitchell jumped in and followed suit. And I know a lot of people lost respect for Joni Mitchell. And I know people that actually got rid of her music from the catalog. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. It wouldn't mean that much to me. Because the other thing with Joni Mitchell you have to understand is that this is a person who has publicly admitted that she has had a bout of Morgellons for years, which would include any number of things, including Lyme disease. And it has really racked her health. So in a lot of ways, you know, she I think she just became, excuse me, like uber protective of everything. And I think this is what happens in a lot of ways when people reach, you know, sort of a period of their life where they have way more living behind them than they do in front of them. The capacity for fear, and especially with Scorpio, I think ramps up. And she's got that Sun-Pluto square. And I think the Sun-Pluto square of her art, transforming the pathos of her relationships into you know, stories and songs that are really interesting to fucking listen to, right? But it also locks her in to a certain form of behavior, which was not really the most brave or bold during the time of COVID. You would think that these people who were the revolutionaries, you know, who thumbed their noses at the man during the 1960s and 70s, would have the same relationship with the man in the 2020s. Not the case. And a lot of the reason is because they became the man. They became the man. Whether they knew it or not, they became the man. Because they were there to be able to enjoy the prosperity and the wealth of their creations. And not everybody, a lot of artists got fucked over with their royalties. I know that, but in a lot of ways they became the man, because when you reach a certain level of financial abundance and prosperity, you become the man, and then you're more interested in keeping what you've acquired versus giving it away or letting somebody take it away. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, by the way. But I think it's in proportion to what you've acquired. So if you have a lot that people can take from, right, you become like, look at the Eagles and fucking Don Henley. You know, he's like, man, he's online all the time trying to hunt down people that he hires, like, you know, a dozen people just to find copyright infringements with the Eagles music. I mean, that's an extreme version of it, but it's a version of it. Joni Mitchell, great artist, went through a period during COVID where you had to kind of look the other way a little bit. Did not diminish my capacity to enjoy her music. She is your true hemp science star of the day. And of course, True Hemp Science brings you some of the best hemp products that are available on the internet, right? True Hemp Science. All you got to do is spend $100 or more at True Hemp Science. I have a banner. Let me put the banner up. I like my banner, although I may have to change the banner. Here we go. True Hemp Science. Type in 15 minutes for free goodies when you spend $100 or more. That's True Hemp Science. Type in 15MINS for your free goodies when you spend $100 or more of some of the best CBD products you'll ever run across. And I guarantee you, the gummies, the sleep gummies and the moon dust gummies, worth the purchase price. And that's and we haven't even gotten into all the other wonderful things that CBD can do for your body, which is also there as well. $150 or more gets you free shipping. There's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you'd like personal service, just talk to Chris over there at True Hemp Science. You can make an appointment, and he will walk you through the options that are available for you and specifically tailor them for you. There you go. All right, we're out of here. I got to go over to 15 minutes, set all that up. We still will be over on Rumble. Hopefully Rumble will be a lot more amenable and friendly to what we're going to talk about today than last week. Holy shit. And I'm still working on the website and doing my best to get that up and running in a way so that it's not compromised anymore. All right, thank you for being here. Buy me a cup of coffee if you like the weather report. The link is there. Tomorrow I'll go over some of the recent coffees, and we'll do a little thanks ceremony, a little gratefulness ceremony briefly here on the show. But thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for being here, and have a very blessed day. Take care. Bye for now.